And good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Big High School Sports Show presented by K5 Construction on 98.9 WXCO, online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. I'm Chad Holmes, joined by former Wausau West head football coach Jason Foster. We will recap the action of Week 9, the final week of the regular season. We'll take a look ahead, look at the brackets, and talk about the matchups for our area teams in the Level 1 playoffs coming up as well. Plus, we have a couple of special guests coming up at 6:25. It will be our coach guest for this week from Wausau West High School, Matt Johnson, getting ready for a Level 1 game at Waunakee that we will have for you live right here on 98.9 WXCO on Friday night. And then our student-athlete guest coming up at 7:06 from DC Everest, their quarterback, senior Logan George. So he'll be our student-athlete guest coming up at 7:06 this evening. But Week 10... it's insane. We've been doing this now. This is our 10th show of the season. Now we're getting ready for the playoffs. We've had no bad Friday nights weather-wise. We won't have another one on Friday this week. But Jason Foster, I mean, it really does pick up now, doesn't it?
Yeah, this thing has gone really fast. Like you said, the weather has been uncharacteristically seasonable. And now we've kind of eliminated those teams who were kind of on the bubble or didn't make it in, and now we get a few of them, and now we get some playoff matchup. It's win or go home, so it's an exciting time of the season.
There's some interesting things to talk about with brackets and matchups, but we're going to do that in just a little bit. We're going to start by going through the action last week in week number 9 of the regular season with the WVC BRC East. DC Everest secured the outright conference championship last Thursday, winning at Eau Claire Memorial 62-22. Evergreens made sure there was no drama in this one, jumping out to a 28-0 lead after the first quarter. Evergreen quarterbacks combined 10 of 10 passing, 200 yards and 5 touchdowns. Everest run game put up 285 yards, led by Reed Frames, 109 yards on the ground. Not unexpected.
Correct. And I think it sounds like they kind of went forward with their NFL game plan of play some guys early, but then try to get some rest and get those other guys in there. I know that they definitely prepared their JV quarterback throughout the week to get a lot of playing time in that game, and it looks like he ddid.
Stevens Point finishes second in the conference. They defeat Marshfield 35-13 last week at Gerke Field. Stevens Point 6-3 overall, 5-1 in the conference. Marshfield 4-5 and 4-2. Marshfield actually led 6-0 after one quarter. Then Stevens Point scored 21 points in the second quarter, pulled away for the win. Grant shot in 10 of 14, 117 yards, a touchdown, added 17 rushes for 127 yards and 2 scores. Johnny Matthews continues his good late season play, 19 rushes, 135 yards and 2 touchdowns. Chase Robinson, the Marshfield quarterback, was 9 of 16, 122 yards, a touchdown and a pick. And Brooks Hinson, we haven't said his name very much recently, but he had 4 catches, including a long touchdown, 93 yards total in the game. But Stevens Point, again, bounced back. We talked a little bit. It was not an easy one after that big game against Everest. Had a bit of a slow start, but in the end, pull away for the win.
Yeah, I think one of the things we've talked about it with Spash almost all season, but they continue to do it even in real meaningful games like this one, is the real balanced attack. The fact that Grant is still rushing for over 100 yards a game and throwing for over 100 yards a game, and then their running game with their running back is still rushing for 100+ yards a game. I think that's a real balanced attack and a real hopeful for them winning formula moving into the playoffs.
Wausau West rallies past River Falls last week, 27-21. Warriors finished 5-4 overall, 3-3 in the conference, 3-6 for River Falls. They needed that one to get into the postseason, did not get it. They were 2-4 in the BRC. Cooper DePoit, 14 rushes, 94 yards and a touchdown, had probably the big play of the game. The fumble recovery return for a touchdown from 22 yards out that when the Warriors were down 21-7. Miles Waldvogel, solid 12 rushes, 75 yards. Tino Massa, 12 of 23, 217 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick for River Falls. Joseph Tarasewicz had 20 rushes, 132 yards, and a touchdown. But, boy, I mean, you've been around this game long enough. 21-7, about 3.5 minutes to go in the second quarter. One play really did turn that football game around, and then the Warrior defense able to shut down River Falls in the second half.
Yeah, it was a complete tale of I guess you could say two halves, but like you said, it definitely started in the first half. I think two things that really stick out to me on this one. One is you hit it on the head with Cooper's scoop and score on that fumble recovery, and what a huge role momentum plays at all levels, whether it's high school, college, or the NFL. And then I think the other thing, really, we talk about this all the time as we interview coaches in programs that are in different parts in their progression of building a program. This was a River Falls team who isn't really building a program. He's been there for a while, and they've won conference championships. But if you look at a snapshot of this season, this team has struggled to find a way to win, and they definitely were in the driver's seat in this game. I would say when we get Coach Johnson in here, he would probably say he wasn't feeling great about the fact that they were down 21-7 and River Falls had the ball. But just like that, it turned, and you could just kind of see River Falls start to crumble. Their confidence went away. They kind of changed the way they approached the game on both sides of the ball, and allowed the Warriors to kind of impose their will the rest of the game. And tough loss for River Falls, but a great win for the Warriors.
And Wisconsin Rapids got their first win of the season, 28-24 against Eau Claire North. Rapids 1-8, 1-5 in the conference. North 2-7, 1-5 in the league. Obviously a rough year for Tony Biolo and his team, but in the end to get the W. It's kind of like last year, actually. They did not win anything until the last 2 weeks. This time around, the final game. I guess big picture-wise, Wisconsin Rapids, obviously a program that's had a lot of success, but right now it's just been a struggle for 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking with their athletic director last week, and you talk about how things are going. We were talking about the Everest and Spash game from the week before and how they competed for a championship this week. And, I mean, Rapids was a 2 or 3 year co-conference champion in the last 3 years. So, I mean, talk about how quickly you can go from the top to, let's be honest, the absolute bottom. And if you're going to get one win in the season, it's probably good to get it in week 9 and kind of maybe jumpstart your offseason. And Eau Claire North, I talked to their athletic director last week, and if they won that game and found a way into the playoffs, which wasn't a guarantee, but if they'd have made it, that was like the first time Eau Claire North could have been in the playoffs in over 20 years. And so great win for Rapids, tough loss for Eau Claire North, and tough way for them to enter their offseason.
Great Northern Conference, and the big one last week in Mosinee, Medford and Mosinee, and wow, I was surprised. Not that Medford won the football game, but what they did to score 30 points in the first quarter, lead 44-21 at halftime, go on to win 58-35. So Medford wins outright the GNC, 7-0, 8-1 overall. Mosinee 6-3 overall, 5-2. And again, maybe it was a spark right away. A kickoff return for a touchdown. We've seen a few of those big special teams plays this season really do set a tone, and that's what Medford did. They completed only 2 passes. So again, they used their running game. Paxton Rothmeyer, 23 rushes, 216 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had one of the pass completions, 29 yards and a touchdown. Evan Wilkins, another back, had 15 carries, 106 yards, and 3 touchdowns for Medford. Falling behind big meant that Mosinee had to throw it around a lot, and Treve Stoffel, 21 of 42, 320 yards, a couple of touchdowns, 2 picks, added 20 rushes, 97 yards, and 3 touchdowns. But wow, I mean, for Medford to go into Mosinee, where Mosinee had a chance to earn a share of the conference championship and do that, I thought that was a major statement made by Medford last week.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we've, in talking to both Medford coaches and athletes and Mosinee, if you look at all the GNC, right, this is where the bad blood lies between these two. And certainly the outcome of this game, the way the game started and 30-7 at the end of the first quarter, this was definitely a statement game for Medford, and I think one they've had circled on their schedule for quite a long time.
Antigo had a chance to sneak into the playoffs, but they needed a win against Wausau East last week. Red Robin scored first, but then it was all East after that. East 40, Antigo 21, so Lumberjacks 6-3 overall, 5-2 in the GNC. Antigo finishes 4-5 overall, 2-5 in the conference. The Davis Winter to Caden Meverden connection sparked East. Winter was 9 of 11 passing, 171 yards and a touchdown. 3 of those connections with the Meverden, averaging 40 yards per completion, 120 yards and the touchdown. I guess number one, it was a big win for East. That does allow them to play a home playoff game. And for Antigo, it was a really interesting season. I go back to when we started this season, and you mentioned the fact that the preview was talking about on Channel 12 about their past glories. they had an interesting season. I think that, again, Antigo's been in this rebuilding mode a little bit for a number of years. I'm not sure where exactly they stand because they had some really tough losses this season. But looking forward for Antigo first. What's your take on their season?
I think obviously they want to make the playoffs. Obviously, you want to have a winning record. I think 4-5 is a step forward for them this year if you look at overall. And I also remember early on, I can't remember who it was, but those were quality wins to start the year in their non-conference games. So I think there's a lot for them to build off of. I think one of the things they're going to need to continue to do to try to compete again in this conference is probably grow their numbers a little bit, have a little more depth. Kind of like we talked with Mosin E this year, get yourself out of those situations where if you lose one guy, it's like losing two because so many guys have to play both ways.
And East, I mean, obviously, I guess it's the most obvious thing to say. The move to the GNC worked out well, and I mean, frankly, they are the biggest school, so I think this is not. It's a little unexpected, but it really shouldn't be unexpected in a sense, right?
Right. I mean, ultimately, they are. I mean, they're the biggest school in that conference, and when you look at the top to the bottom, by quite a bit of a margin. I think that if you asked them at the beginning of the year if they thought finishing 6-3 and 5-2 would be a successful season, I think they would absolutely take that, as would their fans and their school. The next step then is they earned a home playoff game per the computer seating, and so the next step for them is to, obviously, like everyone else, first step is to make the playoffs, and then once you're to that program, at that point as a program, now you look to compete for conference championships and you look to win playoff games and make playoff runs. So this is the next kind of step for them versus where they were a couple of years ago, 8-man and then JV only, and then back to 11-man football, and now in a conference and making the playoffs. So their progression is continuing to move forward.
And obviously it'll be a big Friday at Tom Field. First time they've had a home playoff game in 17 years since 2007, and first playoff game overall since 2012. So again, big Friday coming up for Wausau East. Big Friday coming up for Merrill because the Blue Jays had, after two tough losses that really put their backs firmly against the wall. They had a couple of tight games they came up short on, but they went up to Rhinelander. It was the 100th meeting between the Blue Jays and the Hodags, and Merrill got that win they needed to get into the postseason, 30-18. Merrill 5-4 overall, 3-4 in the GNC. Disappointing year for Rhinelander, 3-6 overall, 1-6 in the conference. Callum Wheeler had a big night for Merrill, 14 rushes, 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. Aiden Lonsdorf, 9 of 17, 114 and a touchdown plus a pick. E.J. Wykes did it on both sides of the football. 3 catches, 55 yards, added 12 tackles on defense. Truman Lamers for Rhinelander was 12 of 20, 202 yards and a score. Sam Zward had 6 catches, 151 yards and a touchdown. And obviously we talked about Merrill right away this season, and had the coach on for week number 1. And I'm going to share a little secret. When you're asked to come on in week number 1, it means that we don't have high expectations. I mean, it's nothing against the program or anything else, but Merrill had struggled last season. They did not win a game in the regular season. What they've done this season has been just stellar, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in talking to both some people from Merrill and some officials done games, they kind of maybe even shot themselves in the foot a little bit and kind of robbed themselves of an opportunity to have a couple more wins. I mean, those matchups in the GNC this year were so close, and they kind of put themselves behind it a little bit with some poor decisions and missing some players and stuff like that. So being 5-4 overall, I kind of go back to that win against Osceola that they had, which probably very few people gave them a shot to win at that. So being 5-4 overall, making it back in the playoffs, I would say they've checked a lot of boxes on their preseason goal sheet.
Rhinelander, again, interesting. They won those first 2 non-conference games. Their one conference win was a 21-point win against East. Yeah. East, who was 5-2 in the conference. Really, they never got the offense going. And then when the defense started to struggle just a little bit, they really never had any answers.
Yeah, I would say that is probably the most surprising of the finishes in this conference is Rhinelander. I think that there was probably a little more expectations for them. They had 2 wins to start the year, even though it was against those former GNC. They kind of probably wish the conference wouldn't have changed. There's 2 wins for them.
There you go.
But ultimately, I think they're ones who are kind of looking in the mirror right now, scratching their head and trying to figure out in a conference this year where anybody could win on any Friday night with the exception of Medford, it seemed like. who won every Friday night, I think that it's probably pretty disappointing to only get one conference win.
This week is the playoffs, but last week was the playoffs for Lakeland and Tomahawk. They went into that game both knowing that if they got a win, they would get to 3 conference wins and in all likelihood make the postseason. And it was Lakeland 7, Tomahawk 6. Old-fashioned football in Tomahawk. A missed extra point by Tomahawk early in the fourth quarter that could have tied it. Turns out to be the difference. Braden Larson, 16 rushes, 78 yards. It must have been intense. I kind of wish I could have seen that game because a 7-6 game where a playoff berth is on the line. I mean, that's old time football, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And probably obviously there was some pretty hard feelings at the end of that one when somebody lost, but what a hard fought game. Great defenses, tough special teams miss on there. But as the smallest team in that conference, I think you're Tomahawk. You got to feel pretty good about being 3-6 and knowing you made it to week 9 with an opportunity to still make it into the playoffs. So overall, I would say a good season for them. Disappointing. I'm sure their goal was to make the playoffs, but they're right there. So they make some changes and grow their numbers and get a little stronger, and next season should look good for them.
And let's get the CWC large in here before we get to Coach Johnson. Stratford finishes off a perfect regular season, both overall and in the conference, 43-8 against Loyal Greenwood. Jack Tubbs, again, hitting 75% of his passes, 12 of 16, 185, 2 touchdowns. He did throw 2 picks, so I guess he was trying to fit a few of those tight windows there in that final regular season game. Colton Bright, 5 catches, 89 yards. Reed Miller, 12 rushes, 101 yards. Alec Chappell had 12 tackles and an interception. Just an outstanding regular season for Stratford, and they are set up to try to make it a three-peat as they go up a division.
Yeah, I think that they took care of business again. You look at the attempts, both passing and rushing for some of their stars, and obviously it looks like they probably played about a half a game, if that. But I don't know. When we look at stats from week to week, you take all of the conferences, the Valley and the GNC, the CWC large, and I mean, Jack Tubbs probably has to be considered right up there with any player from any team in any of these conferences. His play this season has been so incredibly consistent, and they're looking for a third state championship, and like you said, up a division. So he seems like he's in a very good spot right now as they head into the playoffs.
Wittenberg-Burnhamwood wins in Amherst. You talk about a nice way to finish off a regular season. That was it for the Chargers. Whitburn 28, Amherst 19, so Wittenberg-Burnhamwood 7-2. Winners of 7 of their last 8 games. Their only blemish was a loss to Stratford. 6-1, finishes second in the conference. Amherst 7-2, 5-2, but they lost their final 2 games. Obviously, Stratford and Whitburn, very tough opponents. Bryson Schmid, 23 rushes, 126 yards, 3 touchdowns. Boone Shire, 12 tackles for Wittenberg-Burnhamwood. Aiden Nerdahl had 23 carries, 98 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Amherst. But that's a significant win. In the end, they're both a number 4 seed in the same division, but at the same time, for Wittenberg-Burnhamwood, again, it's just another brick that they've been building for the last half dozen years or so.
Yeah, I think they're playing really good football at the end of the season. You kind of look at, we talked earlier about momentum, and you look at an Amherst team who, great season, 7-2, 5-2, but going into the playoffs with 2 losses against really good teams, and that Wittenberg coming into the playoffs with a nice little run, 7 of their last 8, and kind of probably feeling really good as they head into the playoffs. So good game. Congratulations to Wittenberg on taking that next step this year.
Waunakee Fremont's played some pretty exciting games recently. They had that last-second heartbreaker against Amherst a couple of weeks back, and this time they win at the end, 35-34 over Colby. Waunakee 5-4, 4-3 in the conference. Colby 3-6, 3-4 in the conference, but good enough to make the playoffs. Waunakee Fremont led 28-14 at halftime. Colby then rallied, scored 3 touchdowns to lead 34-28 before Waunakee pulled out the win on a 5-yard touchdown pass from Cameron Zilke to Carter Bertishaw. Zilke 12 of 21, 224 yards, 2 touchdowns, 12 rushes, 87 yards and a score. Bertishaw had 9 catches, 156 yards and a score. Brody Vigut had 21 rushes, 157 yards and a touchdown for Colby. Gavin Voss added 19 rushes, 84 yards and 2 touchdowns. Again, it looked like a fantastic football game. A game that when you have those momentum turns where it looks like, Waunakee's in pretty good shape. Saw Colby come back. Really, really good football game.
Yeah, great week 9 matchup against 2 really good conference opponents, playoff berths. Ultimately, they both made it, but one comes in the front door, one kind of steps into the playoffs through the back door. So great high school football game, great way to end the season for Wyowega Fremont.
Marathon finishes off a very tough season, injury-prone season, but a very impressive performance at Spencer Columbus. Marathon 46, Spencer Columbus 14. Marathon 3-6 overall, 2-5 in the CWC Large. Spencer Columbus 2-7, 1-6. Truthers put up a big night, 17-23, 220 yards, 2 touchdowns. Added 17 rushes, 64 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Cody Radke 10 catches, 106 yards. Garrett Bracewell 4 catches, 91 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Ryan Winkler, the coach, he finished off with a win, and he let me know today that he's retiring from his position at Marathon. I had a chance to talk to him before every game this season, last number of seasons. He just wanted to let me know about that, and I said, I'm sorry to hear it. I've always enjoyed talking to him, but coaches don't often get a chance to walk off with 46-14 victories to wrap it up, and obviously you've been through it, where those kind of seasons where you just lose so many cogs, and then you see what they did last week. It's almost like, well, this is what we could have done.
Yeah, yep. I mean, losing True so early in the season like that, and lost some other guys along the way, but obviously what a difference maker True Thurs is. Probably one of the highlights to me on the last 2 weeks is seeing his name back in these stat sheets, knowing that he was able to get healthy enough to get back in there. Garrett Bracewell probably super excited to see True Thurs back in to get his name, but Coach Winkler's done a great job. Again, we talk about this when we interview coaches. We talk about it off the air. We talk about it a little bit on air as well. Like, it's a hard job. It is being a head high school football coach is a really hard job. It is not a August 1st through end of October, early November job. It is a 12-month job, and so many of the things that go into a high school football program are outside of your ability to control as a head football coach, whether it's athletes and commitment and families, but all of the things. And 7 years is a really good run in this day and age when you look at that. So congratulations to Coach Winkler on a really good 7 years, and wishing him all the best moving forward.
Speaking of coaches, we're going to talk to our coach guest for this week. Coming up next, we'll talk to Wausau West head football coach Matt Johnson as the Warriors get set for their Level 1 playoff at Waunakee coming up on Friday night. Big High School Sports Show brought to you by K5 Construction, a family-owned and operated custom builder in central Wisconsin that stands out from the rest for its commitment to quality and excellence. From design and planning to final construction, K5 Construction delivers superior results on every project. Coach Matt Johnson of the Wausau West Warriors coming up in 1 minute here on 98.9 WXCO. Friday night, it's playoff football for Wausau West as the Warriors take on number 1 seeded Waunakee. Hear all the exciting action live on 98.9 WXCO, online at BullFallsRadio.com, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. Coverage begins with the pregame show at 6:35 and the opening kickoff at 7 p.m. Wausau West Sports on 98.9 WXCO is brought to you by the Cloverbell Credit Union, Red Robin Restaurants, Sun Printing, the Wausau West Athletic Department, North Star Restoration, K5 Construction, and Coast to Coast Marketing. It's Wausau West taking on Waunakee in a WIAA Division I Level 1 football playoff. Catch the action live with the pregame show at 6:35 and the opening kickoff at 7 p.m. on 98.9 WXCO, BullFallsRadio.com, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show brought to you by K5 Construction on 98.9 WXCO. Online at BullFallsRadio.com, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. It's time for our coach guest for this week from Wausau West High School, Matt Johnson. Coach, thanks for coming on over.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, and we're 9 games into the season. Obviously, the regular season is over. It's been quite a roller coaster for West this season, and I know that talking to you even before the season started, you knew that you had some exceptionally talented players who graduated from last year, but also felt as though you had kids that could come in, and we saw it. But at the same time, it just feels like at times it was really clicking. At other times, it was a little bit more of a difficult road. What's it been like this season? Because obviously it has been sort of up and down.
Yeah, it has been for sure. And, like everybody, we've dealt with injuries throughout the year. We've dealt with a lot of things, guys in and out of the lineup for different reasons. And the season's long.
Yes,
9 weeks is a long time, and a lot of things happen, and you get illnesses, and you get this, and you get that. And, those things are tough to fight through sometimes, and it sometimes shows up on Friday nights in ways you don't want. And right now, though, I think, we found, at least at the end of this roller coaster, we've kind of found a way up here, and we're playing pretty good football the last couple weeks, coming off last week's win against River Falls. So we feel like we're in a good place right now, even if it's been kind of a wild road to get there.
Well, consistency is hard when you have three different quarterbacks that play in the first, month of the season. How much did that affect maybe how the season got underway? You had, again, a really nice start up in Superior. I thought you played very well for a big portion of the game against a good Hudson squad. And then you, in week 3, won again. But then losing not one, but then losing 2 quarterbacks, and then being forced to go into a very young quarterback for that big game against DC Everest, who he played exceptionally well, but still going through 3 quarterbacks that quickly had to be difficult.
Yeah, it really is. You're trying to get each one of those guys ready, and when you're trying to catch those guys up on kind of your base stuff and your regular stuff and make sure you're playing to their strengths a little bit, maybe you're not moving forward the way you would want to offensively sometimes. You can't develop your offense and keep going the way you want to because you're kind of backpedaling, and then maybe you have a different running back in, or we've kind of bumped our running backs around a little bit too this year. So it's just been kind of chase your tail a little bit, make sure everybody's caught up, and I feel like that Eau Claire Memorial game kind of spurred us a little bit. Everything kind of went well for us on offense, and then last week we played very well again.
Coach, you mentioned chasing your tail a little bit. You've had a lot of success during your time as head coach, some 8-1 season, 7-2 season, conference championships. What is the difference from a head coach standpoint? What's the difference between an 8-1 season, which you've been part of, and a 5-4 season?
Well, health is a big factor in it for sure. There's some things that are out of your control there, and we stayed really healthy in those 8-1 seasons. And last year we kind of limped to the finish line, and you would probably have to at least acknowledge the point that we were without Ray and we were without Bryce towards the end of the year, and amongst others. But so that's a big part of it. That's the big difference. And depth is always a big thing on teams. And if you don't have, we have a pretty small junior class. We have about 11 kids. 13 kids, in our junior class. So you don't have the same type of depth, and you don't have the same type of maybe competition all the time. And so when you lose 1 or 2, you're filling some holes, and guys have to go both ways. And our guys have done a really nice job of that all year, being willing to jump in on the other side of the ball. And so we fought through it, but I think those 2 things are the big things.
I get 2. I'll give you 2.
So talk about last Friday's game. Like the mindset. I've had this conversation. I think you and I have had it, but I've had it with a lot of people too. What was going through your mind when it was 21-7, still in the first half, and River Falls had the ball? Like walk me through that, and then kind of talk about how it went from there and what it felt like to kind of be on that roll. I mean, your season was a little bit of a roller coaster. That game was a roller coaster.
Very much so. It's a nice microcosm of this season. But we honestly, my thought was, oh, crap. Like, they got the ball back. And I didn't think we were playing poor on offense. We just weren't getting some first downs. Defensively, we were kind of getting rolled. They were, I was kind of watching them just methodically getting in and out of the huddle and get another 6 yards, get another 8. And I'm going, holy cow. What are we going to do to slow this down? And our kids dug their heels in. Like, you need that one moment, that one thing to happen. And Cooper's fumble recovery after, I believe it was Marcus that ripped it out. It was a hustle play, and you saw that hustle play. You got 5 guys to the ball, so our guys never quit at 21-7, and that hustle paid off. Mark picking it, ripping it out of there, and then Coop picking it up. And the drive prior to that we moved the ball down the field, Cooper did a heck of a job as the running back. So it was kind of sweet serendipity, so to speak, for him to pick up that ball and finish that drive. He deserved that, and he earned that moment. And then our sideline just sort of – it just breathed new life into us, and that's momentum. Momentum is hard to get, and it's hard to stop. And I think we got it there. We went in the locker room up, down 21-14, but now didn't feel like we were out of the game. And I talked to their coach before the game and just kind of asked him, like, how do you guys only have 3 wins? I see talent everywhere across the board. And he kind of said to me after the game, he's like, that's why we have 3 wins. They didn't respond to their adversity quite as well as we responded to ours.
You mentioned, Cooper DePoit on that play. You mentioned Marcus McDonald on that play. And you just mentioned it previously about the number of kids playing 2 ways. And I was talking to you last week, and it was interesting that, in your plans, you say, I don't want them to play 2 games, meaning 1 game on offense, 1 game on defense. You want to try to limit it to a game and a half and try to make sure that they are able to get through Division I football and be there in Week 10 and Week 11, whatever it may be. But the idea that you do have those kids, and especially you said Cooper DePoit make that play, and then he kind of built on that because he got back to, he had 400-yard games in a row, and then missed a game, and then came back and didn't play very much on offense against Eau Claire Memorial. Did he build on that with that defensive play? Did that build for him on offense, and maybe for some of these other guys that play both defense and offense?
Yeah, I think you nailed it right there. I think he felt that, and he kept rolling. Cooper's a competitor. He wants to be out there on every single play. The hardest thing about my philosophy on a game and a half or giving those guys breaks is a lot of those guys don't want to come off the field. Marcus won't let me take them off the field. DeAndre jumps out there whenever I ask. Will McCorson is always standing next to Coach Wimmer, begging to get back out there. Bennett's willing to go out on defense. These guys are all just, every one of them that we asked to go both ways would do it the whole game if they were asked to. Ethan Sillers is a guy that's always chomping at the bit to get out there on defense. So, yeah, Coop's a competitor, and he definitely fed off that. I thought, we put him in to run that little screen, and he broke about 17 tackles and got us a first down on that prior drive. And so I think all of that built up for him. But if you're asking for a guy to compete, there's not a lot of guys that are going to compete harder than Cooper, and I think he showed that.
Yeah, one of the things, we've talked about a lot of the big plays in that game, but being generally in the area of the sideline for a lot of the game, and seeing the little things too that make such a big difference in that game that people probably don't talk about or remember. But after they scored their first touchdown, I assumed intentional, they did that little kind of pooch punt or pooch kickoff, tried to get it over our front row or whatever, and to watch somebody like your outside linebacker like Cullen Quantz being on his toes and smart enough to field that play. Jacob Sassman got kind of beat on that. I mean, obviously they have a D1 tight end running down the middle of the field and kind of got beat, but then never gave up on it and caught him from behind. I mean, just little plays like that, I think, play a big role in it as well. So who are some of those other guys, maybe your less celebrated guys who've kind of done nice stuff like that all year long?
Well, we talk about that stuff in homeroom with Cullen Quantz, so he's homeroom 233. So, Cullen's definitely one of them. And just guys like, you go back to our offensive line, guys we don't talk about a lot. Cole Hendricks, Mason Vahoviak, those guys are two-way starters for 2-year starters for us. They don't get a lot of fanfare, they don't get a recognition, but both of them are playing their best football of their careers right now, and that makes a big difference. Ethan Sillers, Quentin Totsky on that side of the ball as well. Shea gets his touchdowns and gets his recognition, but then you flip over to the other side of the ball, and through all this conversation, we haven't even been able to say Miles Waldvogel's name too much, and we talk about Coop being a competitor. Miles is every bit as much, and he weighs 155 pounds and tries to play like he's 185 pounds, and we've got to sometimes take him off the field just to protect him from himself a little bit because he's a all gas, no brakes kind of guy, and he's willing to punt. And you kind of mentioned we played 3 quarterbacks. We've played 4 with Miles taking some snaps too in that Everest game. So guys like that, Oliver Wilfley, some of our guys that just they are right. They don't get a lot of recognition, but they do their job on every single play.
Again, we're talking to Matt Johnson, head football coach at Wausau West, here on the Big High School Sports Show, presented by K5 Construction. In addition to being the head coach, you're the offensive play caller, and you got guys in all over that have made plays this season. You got Jack Kostrowski, and Joe Behrens had a really nice he had a great game in his last game, unfortunately was injured. But your quarterback play this season, how have you felt about it? Because each of these kids have done some pretty good things, haven't they?
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to go back, Coach, you asked me about the unsung players, and one of the great plays of that game on Friday night, and I'll answer your question in a second, but Reese Kettner, Tegan Rasmus ripping that ball out of his hand and Reese running down the sideline is one of the lasting images from this game, and I needed to say that, because that was one of my favorite moments watching. We call him Agent Zero as he wears number 0 running down the sidelines with the ball. Is just kind of an iconic moment. But getting to the quarterbacks, Jack is, like we said, going into the year, Jack's a great runner. Jack throws a really nice ball, and Jack's ridden the injury wave a little bit here, and he's finally getting back healthy, and then he gets sick, and he's struggling with that. So the guy's been a competitor all year, tough. but it's been up and down for him a little bit. And, I think tonight, arguably one of his better practices in a really long time. As a team, we had a great practice. Joe actually was cleared today for full contact and able to play. And what a great job he did stepping in.
Yep.
Another great, one of the memories as you look back at the year is that Eau Claire North game, and Joe Gravine coming in with as it turns out, a broken rib and a muscle issue, and going 11 for 12 with 3 touchdowns was what a great performance and what a great memory for Joe. And obviously
by the way, real fast, talk about that, because you said he was hurt in that game, and you knew that, and that limited him, and also in terms of your play calling, and yet you're able to still be able to connect and to be able to move the football. I mean, that has to be something that you take away as well, where you were asked to, in your play calling, to be aware of that, but what he could do, what he couldn't do. That's an interesting game, wasn't it?
That was a unique experience. Like, I can't throw that ball, coach. You can't call that. I can't throw it that far. I can't throw that one. I can't throw that one. So yeah, we were really limited, but fortunately, he was throwing some seams, some just vertical stuff really well, where he didn't have to really step into it, and didn't really have to try to throw to the outside. We didn't really even have our short game, because throwing out past the hashes was difficult for him. But Joe gutted it out. He's a tough kid. He's been just chomping at the bit, and he's been so awesome as a teammate for the last couple weeks as he's been hurt. He's got a play sheet on the sideline. I even noticed he had a headset on at one point in the game. He was really itching to call some plays, but it's an engaged teammate. He's done such a nice job since he's been injured.
One more performance from last Friday night I wanted to point out, because I've just kind of watched him from being a middle school football player all the way through, is Marcus McDonald. Like, Marcus has a lot of skills, right? He's fast. He's and the question offensively has kind of been, what's Marcus's role, right? How do you best utilize him? And as it turns out, we've probably utilized him more on defense and corner, and being one of the best corners in the conference. But I thought Friday night was really nice to see him have that offensive success and get in the end zone, and it was fun to watch Marcus be able to do the things he did Friday night.
For sure. That's the role we've kind of carved out for him, and it hasn't always hit every game offensively, but we ask him to go out there and run jet motion and run across the, hey, Mark, can you go guard their best player, cover their best player all night on defense, and then just run jet motion for us 27 times, and we'll give you the ball 3 times. But then in the 3 times that he got the ball on Friday night, scored on 2 of them, and let's not point up Marcus McDonald making the smartest play of the season, not going down, was the highlight for us too. Mark,
yeah.
He had three touches,
Yeah.
three touchdowns, and unselfish as can be. And as smart as can be, he goes down and lets us kneel that thing out.
And that's
as a team.
fantastic, because if he does score, you still have a 99% chance of winning. You go down, you have a 100% chance of winning. I mean, again, it may not seem like a big difference, but that 1% could mean everything.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't want to see number 4 back on the field. It was good to not see him running down the middle of the field, because he was a touchdown waiting to happen at any point, along with a bunch of their other kids. But yeah, that was great. And we asked in the team meeting on Monday, like, who told Marcus to go down? And nobody claimed it. So Mark said, I just knew to do it, and I went down. So, hat tip to Mark for his football acumen there.
One other kid that we haven't mentioned yet, who is just a fantastic big play guy, is Bennett Matson on the outside. I mean, he makes plays sometimes that you just wonder, how does he win those battles? I mean, again, as an offensive play caller, you know that you just got to give him shots, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. Bennett's our big play guy, and we actually didn't utilize him very well on Friday night. I wasn't really pleased with myself. There was just some things we were seeing defensively that we weren't sure when the right time to take our shots to him were. But we aren't going to win on Friday night if Bennett's not a big part of it. And we've been working all week at making him a part of it. Where his shot's going to come. He's a great receiver. He can do everything in the in between too, the short stuff. But what we need Bennett to do on Friday nights is catch that 40-yard ball down the sideline, most likely right over the top of someone that he's so famous for and does so often. Whether it's one hand, two hand, Bennett is just a fantastic receiver. He takes pride in his blocking as well. So he's just a great all around football player and kid for us.
Yeah, I mean, one just looking at the team in general and talking about the guys and the players and stuff like that. I think we mentioned defense, we mentioned unsung heroes, but when you look at your defense, there's a lot of unsung heroes. But the 2 guys who really stood out to me this year were kind of on the front end of the defense and the back end, right? With DeAndre up front and Jacob Sassman on the back end. Talk a little bit about those guys and the role they've played.
I thought a big part of Friday night's win was DeAndre's leadership. He was again, I talk about the images that I remember as a coach, and DeAndre with the iPad in the locker room with the entire defense gathered around him, coaching guys up, showing guys scenarios was just one of the coolest things I've seen. He's an all-in guy, like I said, always willing to come. But our defense starts and ends with DeAndre and the attention that he receives up front, and he's always in there making plays anyway, splitting double teams and just coaching guys up. He's a great leader for us. And on the back end then, we knew we had a good athlete. Knew we had a good football player in Jake Sassman, but I didn't know we had this. I don't know that anybody really did. Jake just keeps getting better. I mean, he's a tackling machine. He's at near the top of the conference. I haven't looked at the stats for a while, but near the top of the conference, and he's just playing so hard. You mentioned the chase down that he was able to have to prevent a score against River Falls, and we get him on that play all the time in practice too. So shout out Jake on pop there. But no, he's just been so good. He plays so hard. Every time somebody arrives with bad intentions, it's probably number 36 coming from a long ways away. So just super proud of what he's done. And again, you mentioned those unsung heroes, and I've thrown a lot out, but Marcus does a great job on the other side. And then we have Ryder, who's weighs in at about 125 pounds. You saw him be willing to come and stick his nose in there on Friday nights. And as a senior, that goes a long way when you see a little guy like that's willing to throw his body around, and he plays a lot bigger than his size. So that's another good one.
Let's talk about the playoffs before we talk about your specific matchup. You always wonder where it's going to end. How are the 8 teams going to kind of get grouped together? Because so often you'll see the teams from the West, and sometimes you'll see teams from the Fox Valley. This year, got the teams from the South here. Was that surprising at all? Because again, you kind of don't know, especially in Division I, because there's a big spread of the Division I schools, especially here in Central Wisconsin.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about the option of playing with those teams, and honestly, until I talked to Coach Eigenberger at the Sportsmanship Summit, he goes, "I wonder if they'd send Waunakee up here as an undefeated conference champ." And I was like, oh, cool. So I took that information back as my own and passed it on to my coaching staff. So I look super smart that I knew that, but I actually got that from Coach Eigenberger. It was his idea, and it kind of made sense. They do tend to always find an undefeated conference champion, and our conference champion should be hosting a game in the playoffs in our bracket this year. So I'm not in love with how the bracket broke down. I don't, we were 5-4. We probably earned an 8 seed, and that's great, but it was kind of tough to see Everest as a 7 and Point as a 6. I don't understand the process well enough. Maybe I'm not smart enough, but it just seems like when teams like that do what they did this year, they deserve to be playing at their home stadiums on Friday night. So the brackets are fun, but at the end of the day, you got to beat who's on your schedule, and that's Waunakee for us, and that's Hudson for DC Everest, and Madison Memorial for Point. But
well, one more question about that. It also says to me that there's not that big of a gap from the top to the bottom either in this bracket. That, last season we did see an 8 beat a 1. Chippewa Falls beat Hudson in this bracket. You darn near, it was a 6, almost beat a 3, 1-point game. It's not a case where there's one team that you say, oh, automatically they're going to find their way through. I think there's going to be a lot of competitive games in this bracket, won't there?
Yeah, as a team that's played both Hudson and DC Everest, we have a lot of respect for both of them. But it was basically the same game for both of us. Different way to get there, but we lost by 10 points or whatever to both of them. So we understood where that we were competitive with both of them. And if we got them as a draw, we wouldn't have been scared. I wouldn't have been excited. They're both good teams. I'm not saying that, but we would have felt good about it. So when you feel good about the 2 seed, you feel good about the 7 seed. I think that illustrates your point for sure.
At the end of the day, what's your thought on potentially seeing at some point, or just seeing them in the bracket, Waunakee, Madison Memorial, and Middleton. Yeah, the 2 M's kind of. Yeah. I mean, we know what Kimberly and Appleton North and Neenah bring to the table. So, and to some extent, is it kind of exciting or interesting to kind of be in a bracket with somebody different and kind of to see how we stack up, or our conferences stack up against those types of opponents?
For sure. If we maybe didn't have to draw the 7-time state champ in the first round, I'd be a little bit more excited. But yes, it is. We've watched them afar, and I've watched them down at state, and it's kind of you always have those thoughts like, well, we could have done that, or here's what we would have done against them, or boy, we know how to attack that, or we can slow that. So you get to kind of play that out. Now I watched them at the state championships last year, fall to Badger on the last second play, and now we get to turn around and we know where their playoff run expects to end. When you're at Waunakee, you don't expect to get beat in level 1. You don't expect to get beat in level 2. You expect to get beat or win in Madison. And we get to be the first team that challenges them, and that's pretty exciting.
Well, in terms of me, I've been taking a look at Waunakee, getting ready for Friday night's broadcast, and you don't see the percentage of pass completions being that high when you throw as much as they do. They got a good running back. A receiver scored 10 touchdowns. It looks like offensively they got a lot to worry about for you guys.
Yes, they do. They have a 3-year starter at quarterback, and obviously with some state championship medal, and that matters a lot. He's won a lot of playoff games, and he's a tough kid. And I think to your point, I think he's completing over 70% of his passes, which is pretty impressive. And I think their offense kind of starts and stops with him, but then has a ton of talent on the outside. Number 2, their receiver has caught a ton of balls this year. But you look, and this guy has 300 yards, and this guy has 400 yards, and this guy's caught 19 balls too. So he's not afraid to spread it around, and that's the sign of a very good quarterback and the sign of a very experienced quarterback, that he can use all his weapons. And just when you feel like maybe you have a plan to slow down their pass game, and then they can turn and hand it down to those 2 studs too. So yeah, they're going to be a huge challenge for us. Like I said, all we can do is prepare the best that we can, and we have done that. We've had a great couple days of practice. I told the guys I'm super excited to come in tonight because we felt like it was our best practice of the year. So the kids are bought in, the kids are dialed in, they're getting ready, and we're going to go down and we're going to give it a shot, and we feel good about our chances.
And what about when you're calling the plays against their defense? I saw they have 4 shutouts on the season, so obviously they've done a nice job on the defensive side. How do you feel about the matchup of your offensive playmakers against theirs?
I feel good. I feel really good about it. I think their defensive line is tough. I think it's the strongest unit on their team, maybe outside their quarterback. But I know that our guys are ready for the challenge, and I know our guys are playing really good football right now. And like I said, have a ton of confidence coming through this week. And I'll put Bennett up against anyone. I'll put our pass game up, and I think Jack can get the job done. And so we're not afraid of them. We have a ton of respect for them, but we feel really good about our chances and what we're going to do.
And I think one thing that's out there, and I think it's important to note, they've won 7 state championships, but those have been in Division II. This is Division I, right? So
we're not playing their 7 state champions. We're playing this team, but
what have
yes,
they done lately?
The performance factor moved them up to Division I, and who gets to play them then when they come up is the Warriors. So
and we talk a lot about statistics, and we talk a lot about records and all that at the end of the day, but I think it's important for everyone to remember too. And taking nothing away, they're a great team, a great program with a lot of success, but in their conference does not have 8 or 7 state champions in it. Like they have not. Their record is they've played. When Chad talks about having 4 shutouts, there are some bottom teams in their conference that didn't make the playoffs as well. So some of those statistics, some of those things come from a lot of those games. So I think it's exciting. I think it's cool going a different direction. I think it'll be interesting to see how our conference does against the other ones too. So I think it's a nice change up, and looking forward to those results.
Yep, great opportunity for us to have a great moment.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
Guarantee the WVC wants to make a little bit of a statement after being 6, 7, and 8, right?
6, 7, 8, and 8 with Marshfield as well.
Yeah, so there you go.
So.
Well, Matt, really appreciate the time. I'll see you at practice tomorrow, but look forward to Friday. And again, thanks for everything that you do and all the fun with Wausau West. And let's go get them on Friday night.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Matt.
Matt Johnson, head football coach of Wausau West. We'll come back, continue our recap of Week 9 coming up in 1 minute here on 98.9 WXCO. The Newman Catholic High School football team is back in the playoffs. On Friday night, the Cardinals traveled to Chippewa Falls to take on McDonald Central in a Level 1 8-player football playoff. Catch all the action live on the Sports 2 stream of BullFallsRadio.com and on the Civic Media app, starting with the pregame show at 6:40 and the opening kickoff at 7 p.m. The game will also air on a delay basis after the Wausau West playoff game on 98.9 WXCO. Newman Catholic High School football on 98.9 WXCO is brought to you by Red Robin Restaurants, the Cloverbelt Credit Union, Sun Printing, and North Star Restoration. It's Newman Catholic taking on McDonald Central in Chippewa Falls. Friday night in a Level 1 8-player football playoff. Pre-game show at 6:40, opening kickoff at 7 p.m., live on the Sports 2 stream of BullFallsRadio.com and Civic Media app, and on delay after the West game on 98.9 WXCO. welcome back. Big High School Sports Show presented by K5 Construction here on 98.9 WXCO, BullFallsRadio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. Again, thanks to Matt Johnson for joining us. I got to say, it's not always the case where the previous coach and the current coach. Oh, boy, I should keep my mouth shut. But
No, we're very lucky to have him.
And he's lucky to have you as well. So, very good. Let's go. Let's try to finish off the other action. CWC Small, a big one. Edgar and Abbotsford. Abby was ahead in the second quarter. It was really, they battled, but in the end, Edgar always tough. 42-21 wins outright the CWC Small. Maverick Butt had 16 rushes for 183 yards and 3 touchdowns. Will Hackle, 10 rushes for 115 yards and a score. Erwin Aguilera, 14 rushes, 83 yards and a touchdown for Abby. I guess you talked about last week. For Edgar, of course, they did what they're supposed to do, but for Abbotsford going into the postseason, battling Edgar, I think they got to feel like, hey, now we're ready for the playoffs.
Right. I mean, the word I always like to use with all of my coaches or all of our coaches is compete, right? Like you go into an opponent like this, you're looking for the small victories, you're looking for whatever, but you want to know that your kids went out there with expecting to win and that they competed. And the fact that they were winning in the second quarter and the final, I mean, scoring 21 points against Edgar is even in the years when they're playing their second string, the expectation to that second string is that they don't get in the end zone and score. So the fact that Abby still ran the ball well and was able to get 21 points on Edgar, even in a loss, has got to make them feel good about the playoffs.
Auburndale finishes second in the conference, 8-1 overall, 6-1 in the conference. A good win against Iola. Iola Scandinavia, 6-3, 4-3, 48-21. Blake Robb, 8 of 11, 160 yards, 4 touchdowns. You love those 50% touchdown rates, obviously. Jensen Rice, the outstanding QB for Iola, 23 rushes, 119 yards, 2 touchdowns. We're going to talk later about the brackets, but I think both these teams have to feel like, hey, they got good potential as well. And Auburndale, a couple of years ago, they were playing some 8-man football, and they've just turned it around big time.
Yeah, I was really impressed with them. Been really impressed with them kind of all year. There was a little bit of a question mark hanging over them and what it would look like, but at the end of the day, they put together one heck of a season. Obviously, the one blemish against Edgar, who will compete for a second state championship in a row, but yeah, they've got to feel really good about where they're at. I know they were kind of the 1 seed last year, and Stratford got the best of them, so I'll be happy not to see them, but yeah, it should be good.
Pittsfield gets into the playoffs with a 70-32 win over Pacelli. Pittsfield 3-6, but 3-4 in the conference. Pacelli 2-6, 2-5, 38-0 Pittsfield after one. Logan Zickert 5 of 6, 116 yards, 4 touchdowns. Dawson Luther 9 rushes, 125 yards, 2 scores. But a shout out to Bryce Flaker for Pacelli, 25 rushes, 264 yards, and 3 touchdowns for the Pacelli Cardinals. But Pittsfield, they find a way to get that third win. I mean, again, we kind of talked about them, but, in the end, it's one of the aspects right now of high school football. 3 wins gets you in.
Yeah, and good for them. And I don't know how you scored 38 points in a quarter. Good for them.
And finally, Assumption got their first win of the season, beating Rosholt 22-20. The farewell for the Rosholt Hornets as they head to 8-player football. One more season for Assumption, but both teams finished 1-8, 1-6 for Assumption, 0-7 for Rosholt. And 8-player football, Newman Catholic 51-6 over Wild Rose Cards, 7-1 as they move into the playoffs coming up next. We have an information update. Then we'll come back with Logan George, our student-athlete guest from DC Everest, in hour number 2 of the Big High School Sports Show, presented by K5 Construction on WXCO. And welcome back. It's the Big High School Sports Show presented by K5 Construction on 98.9 WXCO. Online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. And as we do every week, we start off hour number 2 of the show with our student-athlete guest. And from DC Everest, conference champions this season, getting ready for a playoff trip to Hudson on Friday night. Very happy to welcome back to the program senior quarterback Logan George. And Logan, thanks for coming on by.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we had you last season, and this season you just continue to build on the success. I guess number one, winning the conference championship this season. First-year head coach. Obviously, you knew they had some pretty good talent back, I think offensively especially, but to complete the job and to get that thrilling win against Stevens Point and win a conference championship, I think it's been a little while for DC Everest. What does that mean?
Yeah, all off-season, this is a thing we've been focusing on. We've been working our butts off to get here and get to that conference championship. And all off-season, we knew Spash would be the team to get through to win the conference championship.
And is that how you drew it up?
Yeah, it really is.
It couldn't have been any more exciting. It was like the perfect game and kind of created the perfect memory for you guys as well. We had Coach on last week and obviously did a great job. Obviously, he's done a great job since taking over. One of the last questions I asked him last week was, what's it been like being the first, for lack of a better term, with no negative connotation, being kind of the first outsider to coach DC Everest in a long time, right? Because it was Coach Stefan Hagen, and then everyone else who's coached since Coach Steph has had a very tight tie to him, coached for him, played for him, all those things. And so kind of talking to him about what was it like carrying on some of the incredible DC Everest traditions as well as kind of putting his own spin on it. What's it like for you being a 2-year starter, being such an important part of this team and kind of doing it under the old with Coach Strelo, who did a great job. Nothing against the way Coach Strelo did anything. I love him as coach. But then with the new coach, what's it been like kind of playing under both umbrellas?
Yeah, so to start for the history, my dad actually played for the team, 96, the state runner-up team. A little soft subject.
Very nice.
But, yeah, I think Coach Mitchell, he's done a great job so far. He's brought new energy to the program, being one of the first outside coaches. We had to fill him in on the history of the football team, and he got to understand that DC Everest football used to be like the big deal, and he wants to bring DC Everest football back to top dog.
Talk about the offense that Coach Mitchell runs, and obviously he was there last year and back here this year, and we were talking during the break about how, one night you can throw for 400 yards. You can have Blake Bankston run for about 300 another night. You got wonderful receivers. You got tight ends that are part of your offense. I imagine it's a lot of fun to be part of such a talented offense with the ability to do so many different things as the quarterback. Can you describe maybe how you look at this offense, your role within the offense, how you look at things on a day like you did against River Falls where you just handed it off a lot in the second half because your team was running it down their throats, or on a night like Chippewa Falls where you're forced to come from behind to be able to throw the football so effectively? How do you look at this offense?
Yeah, I think it just shows the talent and hard work of our guys out there. I mean, our O-line can block up for 300 yards on the ground, and our receivers can go get 350 yards in the air. I mean, and it's a tribute to the coaches, all the hard work they put in the film rooms and preparing us to have a good game plan and let us succeed out there.
We talk a lot on the show about statistics, right? And quarterbacks and running backs and receivers and all, and as we should. And those guys do a lot of really great things. Tell me about your offensive line. Tell me who those guys are and what makes them special and what they put into it.
Yeah, I mean, we got a freshman on the line right now, Chris Ferrario. He busts his butt every day. And left tackle, we got Oscar. He gets the job done all the time. Jake Higgins, he's been battling some injuries, but he shows up and works. Will White, right guard, he filled in for a starter, so he's kind of backing someone up right now, but he's doing a heck of a job. He's doing amazing. And then right tackle, we got Ian Cole. He has played D-line his whole life, and this senior year now, he's switched to right tackle, and he's doing a good job and learning everything and filling in. And those guys worked their butt off. I got to give it to them.
I think one follow-up on that a little bit, piggybacking off of something you just said there, is when we talk about can run the ball or pass the ball, Blake, incredible running back, guys like Xavier, incredible receiver. You as the quarterback obviously love to, like any good quarterback, loves to chuck it. In order to be successful, and then talking about how your right tackle used to play defense and got switched over, one of the ways you win a conference championship is not only by having good players, but having selfless players, right? Guys who are on board with everybody's success and don't need that spotlight on them. Is that something you kind of see as a trait or characteristic of this team?
Yeah, 100%. I think all the guys understand that the stat we care about is the wins and losses. I mean, the receivers understand that they're not going to go for 300 every game and we're going to run the ball. I understand that I'm going to hand the ball off and Blake's going to go make plays and we're going to go win games. So I think that's just, everyone understands that, yeah.
Again, we're talking to Logan George, DC Everest quarterback, here on the Big High School Sports Show, presented by K5 Construction. It's easy to talk about the 7 wins you've had this season. I want to ask you about the 2 losses. You had the opening game against an exceptionally good Rice Lake team, and then you had the game at Chippewa Falls. What did you find out in those 2 games that's going to help you now that you're starting the playoffs?
Yeah, so to start off the Rice Lake game, that was a great eye-opener. There was a ton of good things that happened in that game. I mean, we were right there for the first half. We were right there, and then second half it kind of got away from us. But we learned a lot of good lessons in that, and in our wins that we showed that we kind of learned from that experience. And then Chippewa Falls, we got down quick, and we were 30 seconds away from coming back and winning that game. So
I wanted to ask you about that game because you said it. You fell behind early. You're on the road against a solid team, and yet you showed that ability to bring it back. Did you find out something about your team that night?
Yeah, I mean, what I found out is those guys don't give up. The O-line, they were tired. They were all puffing and puffing because the offense was out there so much. They don't give up. Receivers, they were running so many routes. I couldn't have done it. No way. Not the quarterback. But I mean, it just shows that those guys don't give up and they want to keep going.
Going along with that, talking about Rice Lake and River Falls and Chippewa for you guys, the other schools have had Hudson, who you guys will see in the playoffs, and River Falls, Superior. Some of those. What do you think of the new conference? What do you like? What do you not like about kind of just seeing these different schools and then kind of playing them in those crossover non-conference games, so we actually get to see 3 of them each year? What's that been like, kind of establishing some new rivalries or playing some different competition than just the random kind of non-conference games that we've done in the past?
Yeah, so personally, I like it. I like playing new teams. I don't want to play Wausau West every week or whatever, but I want to play the Eau Claires are new, and Chippewa, and the Rice Lakes, the River Falls. I like that we're mixing in with the big rivers now and playing new competition. I love it.
Is there a favorite venue outside of Steam Stadium that you've enjoyed playing at? Because you've now had a chance to see some teams from the East, some teams from the West, obviously the Valley teams. Is there a place that when you go on the road that you've had the most enjoyable experience where it just feels like, hey, this is, you feel it a little bit more?
No, not really, to be honest. I like seeing new stadiums and just get to feel the turf. And I like me and some of the guys like to compare the turf to each other. We got a list of the turfs and see what turfs we like the best. So.
Well, who's number 1 on your list?
What turf was it? Marshfield. We like the Marshfield turf pretty well.
That's a beautiful
facility. They had a nice field.
Let's step outside of football for a little bit. We'll get back and talk about the playoff game coming up. But you're a multi-sport athlete. What are the other sports you play in?
I play baseball. I've been playing second base for the varsity team the last couple of years here. Baseball was my first love. I love baseball growing up, and all of a sudden football kind of came into my life and got pretty good at it and kind of took off, and now I love football like way more.
Really? I mean, okay, that's interesting because you say it, you had one and then you have another. Specifically, why? I guess, well, because obviously I imagine you still love playing baseball.
Yeah.
But what is it about football that has said, okay, now it's my number 1?
Yeah, so football, I mean, just the environment, like throw a touchdown pass in the crowd, 2,000 people go crazy. I mean, just the excitement factor of football is just way better than baseball.
Nice. And not playing a winter sport, obviously you're getting ready for baseball and football over the years, lifting a lot of weights and doing that sort of thing. What do you like to do when you're not playing sports? What do you do in your free time, weekends and evenings? And
big fisher. I love going fishing. Me and my dad in the spring will go walleye fishing like every weekend. We always get out there. In the winter, I do a little skiing, not a big skier, but ice fishing obviously too. But
Isn't that
Not
fun
much.
that, quarterbacks will not say going to the weight room. All the linemen we have coming in here say,
No.
well, we ask them what they like to do for fun. They'll say, well, I'd like to go to the weight room for fun. What's your favorite class?
I like history. I kind of like to learn about world wars and learn about that kind of stuff.
We've had a lot of history
I
this year, a
know.
lot of social studies. What are your plans for next year?
I want to play football somewhere. I just got to figure out where. It's a tough decision and figuring out the right fit.
Yeah, would you like to share maybe some of the schools? Not even that they're finalists or anything, but maybe who's been contacting you? Has it been the state schools and stuff like that, or bigger? I mean, anything you'd like to share? I don't want to pry at all.
A couple of the Northern Sun schools out there, out in South Dakota. I've been talking to them a little bit, but I'll probably plan on playing at one of the UWs.
It's great football.
It is. It's absolutely wonderful football.
What do you wanna go into in college?
That's a good question.
And you don't need to know yet, but some people claim to know and some don't, so that's good.
Absolutely. Well, let's go back and talk about this week, because obviously does it feel differently this week?
To be honest, no. I mean, it just feels like another day in the office and getting to the grind, and we know we got a job to do, and we've been working our butts off, and the result is how our practice comes out.
You've been around it for 2 years in the playoffs. 2 years ago, went to Hudson, big underdogs, and played a really good game. Your team went over there and had a great opportunity to win. And then last year was a tough trip over to Neenah. What do you take away from those two experiences that will try to make this Friday a victorious trip to the border over near Minnesota?
Yeah. So that Hudson game 2 years ago, that was my first time suiting up for varsity, so that was kind of a big thing for me. I got to see all the upperclassmen play and got the sideline experience, so I think that was pretty important for my football experience. And then last year for Neenah, we knew they were good. We were in it first half, and then second half got to us, and we weren't prepared for the moment. We weren't prepared for being down.
Also last year, obviously this year, you have Blake Bankston behind you. Last year, you were kind of forced to throw it around a lot. You fell behind. Having that balance, I imagine, is important on Friday.
Yeah, 100%. We can run the ball effectively. We can throw the ball effectively. We can get it done on both facets.
So we've done a lot of talking off the air this week. I think Chad and I will eventually get to it at some point tonight. But obviously, you guys, the new computer seeding process maybe did not give you guys as favorable as a seed as certainly I think you deserved as being a 7-2 conference champion. I know Coach Johnson and Coach Mitchell talked a lot about it on Saturday and that sort of stuff. It's there. It's a reality. What has been the mindset of you guys as a team and a program and coach this week? Like, have you just doesn't matter, we're going to go play and win? Are you using it as motivation? What is the thought process or the discussion been within your team about kind of, let's be honest, feeling like you got screwed a little bit?
Yeah, obviously it's frustrating, but we knew we were going to have to, if we wanted to get to level 3, level 4 into the state championship, we know we're going to have to play tough competition. So might as well get a number 2 seed right out of the way and keep moving.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think a pretty good matchup for you guys. I mean, Hudson's a great team and can certainly make the argument that they earned that 2 seed, but I think based on your resume and the things you guys are able to do on both sides of the ball, you got to feel pretty good about the matchup as well as far as your chances of competing and coming away with a win on Saturday or Friday.
Yeah, I mean, they're a good team. We know they're a good team. I think our guys' mentality right now is we can beat anyone, and we're ready to go.
Yeah, have you seen anything in particular in your film study or in the game planning up to this point that you feel like you're going to be able to do effectively on the offensive side against their defense? What is, maybe not to give away too much, but what are you seeing in preparation for Friday?
Yeah, so they're a big team. They got some big linebackers, some big D linemen, and big perimeter players. Just what we've been doing, balance of the ball, pass, run, and all that good stuff.
Finally, what are the keys for your team? I guess if you were to say maybe 1 or 2 things that your team has to do on Friday night in order to win that football game.
Yeah, I think getting off to a hot start, we're definitely a momentum team. If we can get going right away, I think we'll be good. And then finishing the game, winning the fourth quarter will be very important.
Anything else, Coach?
No, I know Chad's got one more question for you before we get there, but I just think you've had a great season. Your team, your program, congratulations on the conference championship, and looking forward for you guys having a great night Friday night.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And got to ask the final question because, especially for a senior who's been around the block a couple of times in multiple sports, you have obviously learned a lot over your career at DC Everest in athletics. For those young players, you mentioned you have a freshman that's on your offensive line or another freshman that's just starting their journey at DCE. What bit of advice that you've learned over the years that would you give to a younger player just starting their journey?
If I had to give him one thing, probably just because you don't win a position battle at a young age, don't give up. Because sophomore year, I was a backup quarterback, and I stuck with it. I grinded out in the off season, and I got the job junior year. So I think just because you don't lose a position battle, keep grinding.
How hard was that?
It was more mentally hard than physically hard, especially for quarterback, because quarterback's a pretty mental position. So I think taking all the mental reps in the off season and just getting my mind right was the most important thing.
Logan George, senior quarterback for the DC Everest Evergreens. Best of luck Friday night. Congrats on all the success that you and your teammates have had this season. And again, thanks for coming on by.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll talk about the brackets. We'll talk about the computer. We'll talk about the seedings, all coming up as we continue here on the Big High School Sports Show presented by K5 Construction. Again, K5 Construction, family-owned and operated custom builder in central Wisconsin that stands out from the rest for its commitment to quality and excellence. From design and planning to the final construction, K5 Construction delivers superior results on every project. More to come here on 98.9 WXCO.
High school football playoffs are officially here, and we've got you covered with all the news and notes. I'm Travis Wilson, and this is a WisSports.net Minute brought to you by Just a Game Fieldhouse in Wisconsin Dells. More high school sports news after this. You may have heard of Just a Game Fieldhouse in Wisconsin Dells, one of the country's premier destinations for youth sports and events, but did you know that Just a Game does so much more? Just a Game also delivers end-to-end apparel, equipment, and event solutions with their state-of-the-art screen printing and embroidery facility that can help with branding for your team and business items, including uniforms, apparel, and more. Just a Game also offers digital services that include a cashless digital platform and event live streaming. Just a Game has also added a second brand new facility in Reedsburg. Find more information at justagame.com. Week 9 football is complete, and before we move on to all the playoff information, let's take a look back at the big stories from the final week of the regular season. A number of conference championships were decided, though there was just one matchup between teams that entered unbeaten in league play. In the Six Rivers Conference, Potosi-Cassville rallied from a fourth-quarter deficit to down Blackhawk Warren 27-18, clinching an unbeaten regular season and league championship. The reward for Potosi-Cassville, who spent the last half of the season ranked number 1 in the WSN D7 coaches poll, a 3-seed in their grouping, and rematch against Blackhawk Warren in level 1 of the playoffs. In the Quick Trip and Wisconsin Dairy game of the week, Beaver Dam went on the road and had no trouble with Port Washington, posting a 23-0 win to secure an outright East Central Conference crown. After leading the state in rushing last season, Notre Dame's Christian Collins has continued his strong play, going for 349 yards and 4 touchdowns as the Tritons wrapped up an FRCC South title in a 41-7 win over Oshkosh North. On Saturday, the WIAA released its 224-team qualifying field for 11-player football and 16-team bracket for 8-player. Head over to WisSports.net to get the full bracket, seeds, and matchups for your favorite team, as well as in-depth previews and analysis. This has been a WisSports.net Minute. Check us out online at WisSports.net.
And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO. And on the Civic Media app. Thanks again to both of our guests, Wausau West head football coach Matt Johnson and DC Everest quarterback Logan George. And you can see he's a quarterback. He carries himself like a quarterback. You've been around enough football players. I think you can tell who the middle linebackers are. I think you can tell who the wide receivers are. And I think you can tell who the quarterbacks are.
Yeah, and I think I love the things he said about how he switched from football or baseball being his number 1 to football being his number 1. And I think when he talked about winning that job as a junior, I know Coach Mitchell's first year as head coach, but he was the offensive coordinator last year. So my bet is they have a really strong relationship as well. And he also has a really, really firm grasp on their offense, and they do a lot of things well. So yeah, he's a quarterback, and he's a good one. And they're going to have big shoes to fill next year.
Yes, they will. And obviously a big game on Friday. Let's jump in. I guess before we even start breaking down the brackets, we touched on it earlier. There's a lot of questions, again, about this seeding. And you shake your head because, as you said, you were never a big fan of the meetings. You didn't really care for the meetings. But at the same time, when you see some of the seedings that we've seen this Saturday, it feels like, the WIA has to get a little more proactive here. There's got to be something else that can be done. But, again, I thought too many where it just felt kind of obvious.
Yeah, all the WIA has to do is just go on social media right now. There's a lot of suggestions out there from what I've noticed. I think it's tough. I think to some extent I'm not defending the program. I'm not defending the WIA. The one thing I would say is that this is, I guess, would still be considered in its infancy. And I think this year more so than the first couple years that there are some pretty glaring missteps. And I think one of the issues with it is people don't understand. I mean, I'll be honest and transparent in this. I don't completely understand what the algorithm or formula or whatever it is. I hear bits and pieces, and I'm sure I could find it online somewhere if I look. But just when you think one thing gets more weight than the other, you look in another bracket, and that doesn't seem to be the case. The one thing I will say I'm not a big fan of, the two things, and one was supposed to be addressed this year, was head-to-head was supposed to carry a little more weight than it has in the past, and that does not necessarily seem to be the case. And then number two, what appears to be in there is there seems to be some benefit to certain conferences over others, or maybe recent success over teams that haven't had recent success. And I think that's a tough part of it for me, because those teams who've had that success aren't playing this season, and the teams who are playing have earned what they've earned, whether it's the 8-1 record, whether it's conference championship. And I saw Travis Wilson did put something out ahead of the selection process last Friday that conference championships is not part of the algorithm. So I know that's a lot of people's gripe, and I think that is one thing they could definitely look at moving forward. Is it should mean something. We do this huge process for conference realignment. If those conference wins and conference championships don't mean anything at the end of the day, why are we spending so much time on conferences?
That's a very good point. Let's jump in. Let's talk Division I to begin with. Let's look at the part of the bracket that involves our area teams from the Wisconsin Valley Conference. You got the number 1 seed, Waunakee, as you said, great football tradition. Obviously a very good team this season, 8 wins and 1 loss overall. Their only loss came to the number 3 seed in the same bracket. And then the Wausau West Warriors, 5-4 overall. They were 3-3 in the Wisconsin Valley Conference. If you count the crossover win, 4-3. Wausau West on the road at Waunakee on Friday night. I don't think, again, we'll talk about maybe as a whole, but there's a huge gap between top and bottom of this bracket.
I would agree. I think how they ended up is interesting, but purely from a Wausau West standpoint, Wausau West got in the playoffs at 4-3 in conference and 5-4 overall. In Division I, you're going to be an 8 seed with that record, and everybody knew it, in particular, including Wausau West. So from a getting hosed, whatever you want to call it standpoint, Wausau West did not get hosed. They are an 8 seed. Waunakee is a 1 seed, and I think that's kind of the beauty of the system is in that regard, you knew what you were going to be. You knew week 1 of the playoffs, you were going to play a really good football team.
I wouldn't say Waunakee is a 1 seed though. I mean, they are a 1 seed, but they lost to Madison Memorial.
Yeah.
Number 3 seed.
and that's one of the
By double digits.
That's one of the things that's out there
in
right?
Waunakee.
Right?
I keep throwing more on this.
Yeah, so it is, and I would bet they're a little bit miffed, obviously, as well. Madison Memorial. So those are the things that really seem to be a big question mark. But in particular with this game, I think they have won 7 state championships in Division II. From year to year, I would say there's definitely years where the D2 state champion could compete with, if not beat, the D1 state champion. And some years you could even say that about D3. At the end of the day, you have to play the game. Waunakee does have a ton of tradition, but they also have a new coach. And that team that was in the state championship game last year is not completely back. So it'll be interesting. Like I said earlier, I'm excited to see the teams from our area playing teams from a different conference as opposed to just playing those Fox Valley teams and Big Rivers
this
teams.
Has the potential of being a rather entertaining game offensively, because I do think that Wausau West has skill players at the quarterback position, the wide receiver position, a couple of running backs that have proven to be 100-yard gainers, and then you have Waunakee with their quarterback Vance Johnson. Again, great numbers: 129 completions, 181 attempts, 71.3%, 1,828 yards. 10.1 yards per attempt. That's a big number right there. 19 touchdowns, 4 picks. Got a running back in Sullivan Scadden who's got 895 yards and 15 touchdowns. I think both offenses have shown the ability to do a lot. I think it will come down to the defenses in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and Coach Johnson's been talking all week about, and said it again tonight, that the defensive front of Waunakee seems to be the strength of their team, their program, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So a lot of it's going to come down to our offensive line play, and given the quarterback enough time to throw the ball and given just enough holes to keep our offense on the field. I think when you look at games like this and you look at lopsided seeding, right? Well, 1 seed versus an 8 seed, so much kind of piggybacking off of what Logan said. What the keys to them are: having a fast start and finishing strong. I think when you look at the River Falls game last week, River Falls had momentum and rolling. I don't think you're going to take that momentum away from a team like Waunakee the way you were able to do that against River Falls. So I think it's important to get off. Fast start's not the word, but I think they need to possess the football. I think they need to stay on the field. I think they got to stay away from 3 and outs, and I think being able to run the football is going to be a huge key for West on Friday night.
The winner of that game will take on the winner of the game between number 5 Chippewa Falls and number 4 Middleton. And you said it. It's again be interesting to see Middleton from the Big 8 down in the state capital area. Chippewa Falls from the Big Rivers. Again, we had the Waunakee is from the Badger South or the Badger North. I forget which one of it is. So we got all these different conferences that are being part of the bracket.
Yeah, I think this is a really intriguing one to me because I don't know who Chippewa Falls is. I think they've played really well some weeks, and I think they haven't played so well other weeks. Fortunately for them, a couple of the weeks they played really well is when it was against Wisconsin Valley schools, and I think that's definitely a game DC Everest would love to have back, and probably thinks they're the better team in that equation. So I think that's a nice matchup, and it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out with Middleton and Chippewa.
And then the other part of the bracket, the upper left, if you're looking at your Division I WIAA football tournament bracket, you got the number 2 seed Hudson and number 7 seed DC Everest. Both teams 7-2 overall. Hudson was 5-2 in the Big Rivers Conference. Of course, Everest 5-0 in the Valley, did have the conference crossover loss as well. But again, 7-2 seeds, 7-2 records. It looks like a very, I think, even matchup.
It is, and I think if you had a takeaway from who's the better conference, the Big Rivers or the Wisconsin Valley, or year one of this new conference, like who? I don't necessarily think it's as simple as saying which conference is better. I think when you look at the Big Rivers, I don't know who the best team in the Big Rivers is, because down the stretch they all kind of beat each other, whether it was New Richmond, Rice Lake, Hudson. And I think if you take those teams as being the best teams in the Big Rivers, I think you throw DC Everest and Spash into that mix and you say they're the best 2 teams here, but probably fit right in with those teams. So I think that those are probably the top 5 teams right now between the two. And I think I don't love, again, that Everest got a 7 seed and has to play on the road as a conference champ, but I do think it's a good matchup, and I think they should feel good heading over there on Friday night.
And I guess the one thing that kind of stand out for Hudson is they did have a very impressive win last week against Rice Lake. I mean, I thought going maybe into that football game that Rice Lake, being at home, had only lost 1 game, would be a favorite, but they lost by a big margin, 35-14. So again, sometimes we go back and we think, well, what was Hudson back in week 2 when they came to Tom Field? Obviously, that was a significant win for them going into this game.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when you look at maybe the size and depth of a team like Rice Lake, it appears to me as that they were playing better football earlier in the season and I have no idea if it's injuries or if it's just good old fashioned depth when you get beat up from week to week and achy and sore and slow down and some of those things. And Hudson, from an enrollment standpoint, is kind of the spash of that league over there, and that's a pretty daunting matchup for them. I still think Rice Lake probably feels pretty good heading into the playoffs, knowing who they beat and who they competed with this year. But
and going in Division II.
Yes.
And then the winner of that game will take on the winner of Stevens Point at Madison Memorial. And you talk about just school names, traditional in multiple sports. Madison Memorial, so often back in the day, were hockey powerhouses.
Yes.
And obviously they've done well in other sports as well. Stevens Point, I mean, they've done well in multiple sports.
Yeah.
But you talk about battle of big schools. That's a battle of big schools.
It is battle of big schools, battle of traditional schools. I love how those Madison schools are right in town like that and right smack dab in those neighborhoods. I think it's another unique matchup. I think if we're sitting here talking about Spash playing Nina or Spash playing Kimberly, you probably give the nod to the Fox Valley just because of the history and the tradition and the outcomes of those previous games in those previous years. But I think there's something exciting and new about this matchup, and to see how Spash and Madison Memorial, and I, again, like I said earlier, I have no idea what the formula is or how it works, but maybe these Wisconsin Valley schools and Big River schools going down and having success against teams from these other conferences helps us in the long run.
And Madison Memorial looks a lot like Waunakee in terms of they have a quarterback who's throwing for nearly 70% of his passes for similar amounts of yards. In fact, has a few more touchdowns. They beat Waunakee 49-34 back in week 2. Middleton they beat in week 3 38-35. So again, I mean, that's early in the season, but recently they have not been giving up a lot of points. And for Stevens Point, I'm curious to see Spash against a team like this because, again, Spash at times isn't, I would call, the prettiest team in the world because they do this short pass game. They're not, where they're heaving it downfield all the time, but they've been so very effective the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think if it's last year's Spash team with the more big play potential and success than they've had this year, they probably feel a little bit better about this matchup. And I think the other thing that's really important for them, again, reiterating what Logan had said earlier, is they've kind of had some slow starts lately. They had the slow start against Everest. They kind of had a slow start against Marshfield this week. And I think in a game that looks like a lot of firepower, which Spash certainly brings firepower to the field as well with what Grant and Johnny and those guys have been able to do lately, I think it's important that they kind of go toe-to-toe early and not dig themselves a hole.
One Wisconsin Valley Conference team in Division II. You got New Richmond and Marshfield. Talk about interesting matchup. You'd have a Marshfield Tiger team that got off to such a difficult start. You have a New Richmond team that ran through the Big Rivers. They were undefeated. They were 9-0 this year, 7-0 in that very difficult conference. Won the conference by 2 games, but yet go back to week number 1, 7-6. Marshfield and New Richmond. I wonder how New Richmond looks at this game because obviously Marshfield had a chance to win that football game with a long field goal late.
Yeah, I think this is a good rematch. I think if you're Marshfield and you're getting the 8 seed, you're going up against a really good football team if they're 9-0 and through that conference. But for some reason, for some game plan, they played them tough.
As tough as anybody that they played.
Yeah, and the only thing Marshfield's done since that time is get better, right? Their offense has really been clicking lately. They played with Spash last week. But let's also be realistic and say New Richmond has probably gotten a lot better during that time too, obviously, if they ran through that conference the way that they did.
Just quickly, the other games in that part of the Division II bracket, and the number 2 seed is Rice Lake. They take on number 7 DeForest. Number 6 Menominee, another Big Rivers Conference school. They will be taking on number 3 Monona Grove. Again, that little nexus between the Big Rivers and down in the State Dane County area. And the winner of the Marshfield New Richmond game will take on either La Crosse Central or Holman. And it was Central that kind of roughed up East back in week 2, I think.
Logan.
It was Logan. Okay.
It was in that storm-shortened game.
Yep. Okay, so that's Division 2. That's the only area team, Marshfield, in there. In Division 3, of course, perennially a number of Great Northern Conference teams in D3. Medford is a number 1 seed. They will take on number 8 Lakeland. Medford defeated Lakeland by a score of 40-8 back in the middle part of the season. That was in Minocqua. This one's in Medford, and Medford is just, frankly, you talk about teams that have been getting better and better. That run game is getting better and better, and a real tough matchup for Lakeland after their 7-6 win over Tomahawk last week.
Yeah, I think honestly, it's a good matchup for Medford. I think obviously they come in there with a lot of confidence. Tough for Lakeland to go up against Medford again. I mean, that's
Right.
a pretty high hill to climb. And a lot of the deck is stacked against them. But again, with Medford as a 1 seed, they're not gonna play a really good team in the first round. But again, they've struggled to have competitive regular season matchups in their conference, and this will be another one that I don't believe will be that particularly competitive. So again, struggling to get them ready for level. Who would they have in level 2, Chad?
The winner of Wausau East and Fox Valley Lutheran. So game will be played at Tom Field on Friday night. Wausau East, of course, 6-3, 5-2 in the conference. Fox Valley Lutheran was 5-4 from the Bay Conference. But again, we were talking a little earlier, they lost 2 of their games by 1 point. They lost another game by 6 points, and they had 1 game where they lost by double digits. So obviously a 5-4 team that could have easily been 7-2 with a little flip of the switch, and maybe even 8-1. And obviously, again, this is where the Bay Conference. Again, it's been traditionally a pretty good conference. It's going to be an interesting matchup because the Great Northern has struggled for the most part in games against teams from other conferences in this bracket.
Yeah, I think East has the advantage of playing at home. I think East, one of the things they've shown to do very well is explosive plays and big plays. So obviously that's a big part of their game and something they'll need to do in order to be competitive and win this game. And Fox Valley Lutheran comes in very battle tested. I kind of had some matchups similar to this when I was up at Northland Pines, where there's a couple years where we were independent and kind of ended up with some really nice regular season records, and then pulled in a Green Bay Notre Dame one year and a Luxembourg Casco. And I think this is kind of along those same lines. I think Fox Valley Lutheran is a pretty, not state championship caliber team, but a pretty solid team in and out and very battle tested from playing in that Bay Conference.
And for Wausau East, I imagine is not being too high.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, this is big. When you haven't played a home game, that's school. I mean, obviously, these kids were not even born, probably. 17, somewhere around that time, 2007, where Wausau East last played a home playoff game. I would think that everybody involved on the east side here was going to be very excited and going over to Tom Field on Friday night for those guys to come out there. Sometimes you get so juiced up, you're coughing it up and making some mistakes mentally. I imagine, okay, be juiced up, but also make sure you're mentally sharp as well.
Right. Yep. They're gonna see a defense. Don't know much about Fox Valley Lutheran other than looking at their record last week. But they're going to see a team that plays really good defense like they have not seen in the Great Northern. So I think taking care of the football is going to be really important for them.
Also in that bracket, the number 7 seed Merrill. Again, really good year for the Merrill Blue Jays. I mean, they struggled so badly scoring points a year ago, and for them to turn it around, have a winning record, 5-4 overall, get to the playoffs, outstanding work. But they got a really tough matchup. Onalaska traditionally beats Great Northern Conference teams in the playoffs. In fact, the last 2 years, they eliminated Medford in the playoffs.
And if I'm not mistaken, they beat Medford week 1 or 2 this year as well, when Medford had knocked them off last year. So yeah, that is a tall order for Merrill. They do seem to have righted their ship a little bit in week 9 against Rhinelander, but this will be a completely different team that they're used to seeing the last 7 weeks.
Yeah, and I remember in the past, Onalaska's played Mosinee. I mean, they're always in this bracket, and they always seem to be doing pretty well against those GNC teams. So
and they come out of a really strong conference down there with Holman and the both lacrosse schools and Tomo when they're good. So they battle tested as well.
Yeah, you said it. They lost to Holman in week 3. They also lost to Logan in a 1-point game in week 5, and they lost their non-conference game against West Salem. So again, no real soft touches there in terms of their losses. The winner of that game will take on the winner of Lacrosse Logan and Wapaka. So again, I think that you look at the top of the bracket, Medford's in a good position. I think that if they were the 2, it would be much more difficult. With Logan there as a 3, I think that Medford has a pretty good chance of getting to level 3 this year.
And it would be good. That'd be a nice next logical step for their program.
Division 4, you have Mosinee. They were one of the right on the line there between 3 and 4, and they're in Division 4. Will be interesting to see how that works out for Mosinee. They are a number 3 seed in their bracket. They'll take on number 6 seeded Ellsworth in Mosinee on Friday night. For Mosinee, how to put this? It's been, I think, not the normal Mosinee year. I think this is a team that did lose incredible talent. And the fact that they are back at a number 3 seed, that they did win 6 games this season, is a great job by Coach Stoffel and his staff there at Mosinee. But boy, they've been riding Treve Stoffel a lot. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see how far they can go unless they can get a little bit more outside of Treve, both offensively and defensively.
Right. When you talk about losing, we've talked about this throughout the year, but I mean, we talk about losing a kid like Keegan Jersley, but they lost other guys too, and they really lost it kind of in all 3 phases, right? I mean, he was such a good return specialist, and they were always they had a lot of different ways of scoring points. And this year they're obviously working a lot harder to get in the end zone. They've obviously been beat up during the year from an injury standpoint and losing guys. So if they get healthy, they definitely have a really good leader at the quarterback position who does a lot of things really well on both sides of the ball. So Ellsworth, traditionally a strong program.
Middle Border Conference, 6-3 this year, 5-2 in their conference. Baldwin Woodville first place, Prescott in second. I mean, it's going to be, I think, again, this is the kind of game that I think is a very good matchup.
Yeah, I think it definitely will. It'd definitely be a good measuring stick for Mosinee to see where they ended the season. Obviously, Medford, they know that this was not their year. In regards to being able to compete with them. So stepping outside of the GNC, where do they stack up?
Should Mosinee win this game, they would in all likelihood have another Middle Border Conference foe in week 2, because the winner of this game will take on the winner of Baldwin Woodville, who is the champions of the Middle Border. They take on number 7 seeded Oconto Falls. Top half of the bracket, the number 1 seed, it seems like a school that's always up there, is Freedom, the Freedom Irish. Do they still have the Crewalt coach, I wonder?
I do not know.
That's because I remember the former NFL player Clint Crewalt was the coach there for a time. May still be there. I should have looked that up. But Freedom takes on St. Croix Central on Friday. Winner of that one will take on the winner of Seymour and Prescott in Level 2. Division 5, and some really interesting stuff here in D5, because you have the Stratford Tigers, who have won the last 2 Division 6 state championships. They have been given the award. Hey, the thing is, if you get moved up, that's normally a pretty good thing in terms of you had good results. So
there's people who aren't very happy about the competitive balance moving. But there's also a lot of people who would love to have the success that they've had to be forced to move up.
It's a problem that you like to have,
exactly.
I guess is the bottom line. And the problem that Stratford has is being a number 1 seed in Division 5 and being one of the pre-tournament favorites in Division 5 in their first game against Horicon Hustisford. I'm glad I'm not doing that game. Stratford, and then also part of that bracket is another CWC large school, Amherst, who gave Stratford a pretty good battle 2 weeks ago. Amherst is home despite losing those final 2 games. They take on Oostburg. So the potential is there for a rematch in Level 2, but Stratford just looks so tough. I mean, I would be surprised. Again, I don't know a lot about Horicon Hustiford, but at the same time, it really doesn't matter because of how good Stratford has been playing, especially the fact that something we've talked about the last 2 years, in fact. We have seen that development of a multifaceted offense has made them, I think, taken them to another level, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think that obviously we talk about Logan George's progression. I think Tubbs is kind of in the same situation. I mean, he has not only is he a multi-year starter, but he's a multi-year state champion. He's been part of that program in their back-to-back championships. And at the end of the day, whether you're Division 5 or Division 6, they know how to prepare week in and out. They know that there's not going to be any easy games moving forward. And I think that's a distinct advantage if you have that sort of success in your pedigree.
Just a little bit about Horicon Hustisford. They come in with an overall record of 4 wins and 5 losses. They are from the Capital Conference. They were 4th in that league at 3-3. Other teams in that conference, Columbus, Lake Mills, and Lodi, finished above them. Clintonville in that conference finished below them. And again, 4-5 team going up against the Stratford Tigers. Enjoy the trip.
Yes.
Enjoy the playoffs. And then probably get ready for the offseason. And Amherst. And again, for Amherst, they lost to 2 really good football teams. And in fact, I think in a lot of ways they played better against Stratford than maybe they did against Wyoming Fremont. And they had a game against Spencer Columbus that was scoreless at halftime. So maybe, in fact, they played a little bit better football than they were when they were struggling against a couple of teams that you would think they would have beat by bigger margins.
Right. And ironically, I would have to think that Stratford wouldn't love that rematch. I mean, they beat them soundly, and Amherst took 3rd, Stratford took 1st. But at the end of the day, there's been some epic battles between the two of them, and there's probably a little extra mental element to that game than there would against some other opponents for Stratford.
And Oostburg is from the Big East Conference. They are 5-4 on the season. They were 4-3 in the Big East, finishing in 3rd place in that conference. Again, that's one thing about when you get to the playoffs. There's these teams that you can sit here and try to sound like you know what you're talking about. I have no idea about this version of Oostburg. But that's in the lower right-hand corner of Division 5. But there's just another group of CWC schools in the upper left-hand corner of the bracket. You got St. Croix Falls is the number 1 seed. They take on number 8 Elk Mound. And the winner of that game will take on either Wittenberg-Burnhamwood, who is the number 4 seed, or Barron, who is the number 5 seed. And again, Wittenberg-Burnhamwood, they lost a non-conference game against a very good Bondwell squad back in week number 1. They had a game they lost, I believe, 33-6 against Stratford in the middle of the season. Other than that, nothing but wins. And as we talked about, a team that's gotten better. They have to make some changes. They lost a long-time starting quarterback. They lost a big running back from last season, and they were able to find some answers and get better and better during the season. And, of course, the defensive side, I think, is also something that Whitburn has been doing very well.
Yeah, I think this is a good matchup for them. I think that where they sit in this bracket is they definitely have the opportunity to win some football games. I know St. Croix traditionally is pretty competitive in the playoffs, but they're playing really good football right now. They're on a nice run, and kind of I think it's a benefit to playing some non-common opponents for them as well.
And again, not to make assumptions, but I'm going to make a slight assumption here because Barron is from the heart of the North. They finished in 4th place in that conference at 4-3. They have an overall record of 6-3. St. Croix Falls was the top team in that league, but Northwestern, Spooner also in that league. You coached up in the north part of the state. What do you know about the heart of the North is in terms of the conference and the strength of that conference?
I know Maple Northwestern was kind of the jewel of that conference. I don't know if they got moved out with the last realignment, but they kind of had a nice run.
Second, Northwestern, I assume it's the same school.
Yep.
They were second in the conference.
Okay, so I know traditionally they're a pretty strong school. Is that where Ashland and Hayward ended up as well when they left?
And Northwestern beat Hayward 58-14 last week, so they're pretty good.
I think they're a really nice team. I think that
so the top of that league is pretty strong.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that Barron would be a good test, but I think Wittenberg-Burnhamwood in a good spot. Northwestern is actually the number 2 seed in this bracket. They take on Colby, number 7. Colby's been an interesting team. They still have that running game. They've given up quite a few points, though. Again, that seems to be a pattern. If they can get the defense a little better, but that's going to be a tough matchup, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I keep waiting for Colby to be Colby this year, and I don't know as though Colby's going to be Colby this year.
Yeah.
So I think that's a tough matchup for them, but they can score points, so anything's possible.
Let's go to Division 6. You got Waunakee Fremont. Again, very exciting games for Waunakee Fremont, but a number 8 seed, and 5-4 team, I guess, not to be unexpected. They take on Coleman, and boy, Coleman's always a physically tough football team. They like to run the football. They got great wrestlers as well, so that's a tough matchup for Waunakee at Coleman. The winner of that game takes on either number 4 Abbotsford, who takes on number 5 Nakusa. So a couple of area teams. I think Abbotsford is in a good spot in that first round game. I think a really tough draw for Waunakee against Coleman.
It is. I think it'll be probably good for Abby if they're able to pull it off against Nakusa to kind of see how that matchup plays out. Just
Run and run.
Exactly.
And then the bottom of that bracket, Auburndale is the number 3 seed. And again, they've had an outstanding campaign. They take on number 6 Westfield at home on Friday. And Bondwell, who we talked about, beat Wittenberg-Burnhamwood early in the season. They take on number 7 Crandon. So Auburndale, almost a little surprised that they're not a little bit higher. But then again, they were not the conference champions. They did lose by a significant amount against Edgar. But the way they've been playing, they had I thought, an impressive win against Iola. They had a very impressive road win late in the season against Abbotsford. I still think that's a team that can make a bit of a run.
I do too. I think that's a good matchup. Who played Bondwell early this year? Was it
Wittenberg?
Yeah, I remember that
week
one
number
early
1
too, and I think
they
Bondwell
won. They won.
They kind of gave it to them. So I think that's an interesting matchup, and I think Crandon actually played a couple great Northern schools tough early
They played
as
Merrill.
well.
They had a big lead late, and Merrill came back and beat them in the final seconds.
So some interesting matchups.
Division 7, you got Edgar and Pittsville. Pittsville earned their way in, but they get a trip to Edgar as a reward. And Iola Scandinavia is number 2 seeded in that bracket, and they take on Hilbert in the first round. The Edgar's Pittsville winner takes on either number 5 Chayocton or number 4 Roncalli. And the winner of Iola against Hilbert takes on either Lord's Academy, the number 6 seed, or number 3 Crivets. But, you look at what Edgar's done this season, and it actually sets up where, they would face Iola level 3 if it goes chalk, and they have to feel pretty good as they've already beat them once.
Yeah, I would say it's a good draw for Edgar. I think that they kind of, knock on wood for them, but I think, like you said, I think they walk to level 3 in this one and then see where it goes from there.
And finally, in 8-player football, the Newman Catholic Cardinals make it to the postseason again. They made it every year since the WIAA started sponsoring 8-player football. Newman Catholic, number 3 seed in their bracket, take on number 2 seeded McDonald Central in Chippewa Falls. Old CWCC battle, and they actually played in the playoffs a couple of years ago. Newman won by a big margin, but this season McDonald's been among the top-ranked teams throughout the state. They have big numbers on their roster, big numbers. In fact, they're so big they're going back to 11-player in a couple of years. And Newman has struggled with injuries, and they've only had like 16, 17 players on the field available. Numbers-wise, it's going to be tough, but boy, I never underestimate the ability of that coaching staff led by Paul Micklig to be able to put together a game plan that'll give them an opportunity.
Yeah, I think that is a key. And talking to different coaches over the course of the last couple of years in regards to 8-man and in talking with Coach Micklig and hearing things about Coach Micklig, I think ultimately that is kind of what separates teams in Great Northern or in 8-man football is the coaching. And I think Coach Micklig has set himself apart.
The winner of that game will take on either Owen Withy, who's been the number 1 ranked team in the state for a number of weeks for entertainment purposes only. Now you actually play the games. And they take on Port Edwards in the level 1 game. Allman Bancroft, also from the Central Conference that Newman Catholic is in, along with Port Edwards. They're a number 3 seed at the bottom half of the bracket. They take on number 2 seeded North Crawford. So, again, we'll have Newman against McDonald on the Sports 2 stream coming up on Friday night, and Wausau West at Waunakee live here on 98.9 WXCO. Any final thoughts as we go to level 1?
No, it's exciting. It's exciting to know that next week when we get together, we're talking about half as many teams.
We will look forward to that. Thanks to Matt Johnson and Logan George for being our guests. It's been the Big High School Sports Show presented by K5 Construction on 98.9 WXCO.